Morning, everybody. My name is Jill, and I'm a Community Engagement Coordinator for Indiana 211. And today's session is session 13. And I will turn it over to my counterpart, Sherry Bowers-Duker, to present. Unmute, Sherry.
Sorry, yeah, I was muted. Thank you, Jill. So just to remind everyone, we do have surveys for our 211 University sessions. Here is a QR code for the survey, as well as the link, which I believe was posted in the chat for you as well. So if you would like to provide feedback on today's session, we ask that you fill out this survey. And then if you are wanting CEUs for attending today's session, you will need to complete the survey to let us know that so we can keep a record of that.
Any questions can be put in the Q&A section of the Zoom window, and I will monitor those.
Yes, thank you. All right, so today is the fourth of 5 presentations where we will share county level data with you from 211 calls. For these presentations, we are using the 5 regions that the Department of Health's Division of Nutrition and Physical Activity uses for their Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement Program, or LFPA. Today we will cover the Southwest region, which includes Brown, Clay, Daviess, Du Bois, Gibson, Greene, Knox, Lawrence, Martin, Monroe, Orange, Owen, Park, Perry, Pike, Posey, Spencer, Sullivan, Vanderburgh, Vermilion, Vigo, and Warwick counties. So we've got a big group of 22 counties today. Some, but not all of the data that I will be sharing today can be found on our data dashboard as well, which is on our website. So like with the last few presentations, after I share that regional data with you, I will also do a brief refresher on how to access and utilize the data dashboard. And then as I am presenting today, if you have any questions, as Jill mentioned, you can go ahead and put those in the Q&A section. And if they are relevant as we're going along, Jill can go ahead and let me know what those questions are and we can answer them. Otherwise, we will take questions at the end as well. So all of the data I will be presenting today will be for the full year of 2024. And our first graph shows the total number of calls received in 2024 for each of those 22 counties, as well as the number of distinct callers and the number of referrals made to callers in those counties. Since the counts for Vanderburgh County were so much larger than the other counties, I have those stated off to the side rather than in the graph to prevent the scale from being so large that we couldn't see some of the other counties' counts. You will notice that the distinct caller counts are the smallest counts for each county, and that's because those represent each individual caller, and many people call 211 more than once, so their multiple calls are counted in the total call number, but they are just counted once as a distinct caller. You will also notice that the number of referrals is the largest count for each county, and that is because our community navigators do provide at least 3 referrals for each need a caller has if possible. So of these 22 counties, Vanderburgh County had the greatest number of calls, distinct callers, and referrals with over 17,000 referrals in 2024, followed by Vigo County with about 9,000 referrals, Monroe County with over 6,000 referrals, and Warwick County with just under 2,000 referrals. And for reference, the entire state of Indiana in 2024 received over 174,000 calls from over 117,000 distinct callers and made almost 570,000 referrals. So Vanderburgh County makes up about 3% of those total calls, callers, and referrals. This graph shows the percentage of 2024 calls from various need categories for each county, and I have included the top 3 need categories that we receive calls for, which are housing, utility assistance, and food and meals, as well as 2 other need categories that do not receive as many calls, but that agencies are often interested in learning more about. And those are transportation and mental health and substance use disorder. You'll notice this graph also includes Indiana in addition to the 22 counties, so we can compare the percentages to the full state average as well. We can see that of these 5 need categories, housing shows up in the greatest percentage of calls for every county as well as for Indiana as a whole. The counties that had the higher percentage of housing calls than the state average included Brown, Clay, Du Bois, Greene, Monroe, Owen, Park, Pike, Posey, Sullivan, Vigo, and Warwick counties. This group of counties is split pretty evenly on whether utility assistance or food and meals is the second highest need category. For 7 of these counties and for the state as a whole, there was a less than 1% difference between the percentage of utility assistance and food and meals calls. And those counties were Daviess, Knox, Owen, Park, Perry, Pike, and Sullivan. And then Vermilion County had the largest difference with about 30% of calls having a need for food and meals and about 20% of calls having a need for utility assistance. The only counties that did not have a higher transportation need than the state as a whole were Brown and Martin counties. So lots of transportation need in this group of counties here. And then the only counties that had a higher percentage of mental health and SUD calls than the state as a whole were Brown, Daviess, Du Bois, Knox, Monroe, Orange, Owen, Spencer, Sullivan, Vanderburgh, and Warwick counties. This graph shows the percentage of 2024 calls with unmet needs for those same 5 need categories. So we consider a need to be unmet during a call if a community navigator is unable to provide a referral for that need. This data represents unmet needs that occurred for 3 reasons. The first is that the service the caller needs is unavailable in their area. The second is that the caller is ineligible for all resources available in their area. And the third reason a need may be unmet is if the caller has exhausted existing resources, meaning they have already been referred to all of the available resources they are eligible for, and they are in need of some additional resources. Transportation was the greatest unmet need for the state as a whole in 2024, as well as for Clay, Du Bois, Gibson, Greene, Monroe, Pike, Posey, Spencer, Sullivan, Vanderburgh, Vigo, and Warwick counties. And of these counties, Spencer County had the greatest transportation unmet need, with over 55% of transportation calls having an unmet need, closely followed by Pike County at 50% and Du Bois County at 45%. Utility assistance was the greatest unmet need for Daviess, Martin, Orange, Owen, Park, and Perry counties, with Perry County by far having the greatest unmet need for utility assistance at over 55% of calls. And then housing was the greatest unmet need for Brown, Knox, Lawrence, and Vermilion counties, with Knox County having nearly 35% of housing calls with an unmet need. And then there is more unmet needs data available on our data dashboard, which I will talk more about at the end of the presentation for anyone who missed the last 3 sessions. And I will also talk about how we use this data to identify new resources and how you may be able to help us with that process as well. And then the remainder of the graphs will show data from the demographics and social determinants of health questions that our community navigators ask 211 callers to help them better identify which resources the caller will be eligible for, as well as what additional needs the caller may have that they can provide referrals for. It is important to note that 211 callers are not required to answer any of these questions if they do not feel comfortable doing so. So keep in mind that there is some missing data and that these percentages only reflect the responses we did receive. And that is why the categories for any given county add up to less than 100%. So this first graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers who identified with each sex category in each county. There were more female than male callers in every county and in the state as a whole. The counties that had a higher percentage of female callers than Indiana as a whole were Daviess, Owen, Park, Pike, and Vanderburgh counties. And the only counties that did not have a higher percentage of male callers than Indiana as a whole were Daviess, Pike, and Warwick counties. This graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers from various age ranges. We can see that in almost all of these counties and for the state as a whole, the age group with the largest percentage of callers was 31 to 45 years old, ranging from 20% to 32% of callers. For Brown, Martin, Pike, Spencer, Sullivan, Vigo, and Warwick counties, the age group with the highest percentage of callers was 46 to 60 years old, which ranged from 18% to 30% of callers. For Owen County, the age group with the highest percentage of callers was 60 years and older, making up about 10% of callers. For Monroe, Orange, and Vermilion counties, there was actually a larger percentage of callers from the 18 to 30 year age group than there were in the 46 to 60 or 60 years and older groups. The collective outlier here is the younger than 18 age group, with the state and every county except Pike and Warwick having less than 1% of callers from this age group. While youth callers are much less common, we do receive some calls from youth looking for resources. This graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers with various housing situations. In every county here and in the state as a whole, the largest group was those who had housing at the time of their 211 call, although it is worth noting that every county had less than 42% of their callers say that they had stable housing. The second largest group for 17 of the 22 counties and for the state as a whole was those who had housing and were worried about losing it in the future, with the percentage of callers in that group ranging from 13% to 24%. The second largest group for Brown, Gibson, Knox, Martin, Perry, and Spencer counties, and the third largest group for the remaining counties, was those who had no housing, ranging from 6% to 19% of callers. And then the percentage of callers who were currently facing eviction or foreclosure ranged from 0% to 8% of callers. And then this graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers from various race categories. For the state as a whole, about 33% of callers identified as white, while 29% of callers identified as Black. We can see that this group of counties varies greatly from that state trend, with all counties having a much larger gap in callers between these two racial groups. All of these counties, except Monroe, Vigo, and Vanderburgh, had over 50% of callers identify as white and less than 7% of callers identify as Black. Monroe County had about 46% of callers identify as white and 11% of callers identify as Black. Vanderburgh County had 33% of callers identify as white and 29% of callers identify as Black. And then Vigo County had 49% of callers identify as white and 12% of callers identify as Black. And then all other race categories had less than 7% of callers for every county and for the state as a whole. This graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers from various employment categories. For the whole state and for Du Bois, Lawrence, and Vanderburgh counties, the largest group was those who were unemployed and looking for work, ranging from 16% to 21% of callers. But for the state as a whole and for Lawrence County, that group is very closely followed by those who were unable to work due to being disabled. And then those who were unable to work due to being disabled was the largest group for Brown, Clay, Davies, Gibson, Green, Knox, Martin, Monroe, Orange, Park, Perry, Pike, Posey, Spencer, Sullivan, Vermilion, and Vigo counties. With the percentage of callers in that group ranging from 13% to 29%. And then for Warwick County, the largest group was actually those who were employed full-time, with that being about 14% of callers. I also want to note that Indiana as a whole and 18 of the 22 counties had a greater percentage of callers who were employed full-time than callers who were employed part-time. All right, thought I skipped a graph there. And then this graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers from preferred language categories. For Indiana as a whole and every county here, the percentage of callers whose preferred language was English was over 95%. The state as a whole had about 2% of callers whose preferred language was Spanish, while Monroe and Vanderburgh counties had about 1%, and the remaining counties all had less than 1% of callers whose preferred language was Spanish. Lastly, if you notice the small sliver of green above Vanderburgh County and the state, those indicate that we do also receive some calls from individuals whose preferred language is one other than English or Spanish. So this is a good time to remind everyone that our community navigators do have access to a service that allows them to connect with interpreters for over 240 languages. So we are able to assist those individuals as well. And then additionally, on our website at in211.org, there's a Google Translate option at the top that allows individuals to translate the entire website to the language of their choice and search for resources on our website in that chosen language. And then this graph shows the percentage of 2024 callers from various annual household income ranges. For Indiana as a whole and every county here, the largest group of callers is those with an annual household income of less than $15,000, ranging from 27% to 43% of callers, followed by those with an annual household income between $15,000 and $25,000, with the percentage of callers in that group ranging from 8% to 20%. For every county, the trend seems to be that the lower the household income is, the greater percentage of callers we see from that group. And then this is our last graph for today, and this shows the percentage of 2024 callers with various highest education levels. For Indiana as a whole and every county here, the largest group of callers was those whose highest level of education is high school, ranging from 27% to 45% of callers. The second largest group for almost all counties and the state was those whose highest level of education is junior high, ranging from 8% to 16% of callers. The third largest group for most counties was those who had some college, with the percentage of callers in that group ranging from 4% to 8%. However, the third largest group for Brown and Owen counties was those who completed trade school or a certification, with both counties having 5% or higher of their callers from this group. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, some of the data I presented today and much more data can be found on our interaction data dashboard. So I also wanted to remind everyone how to access that. On our website, which again is in211.org, you would go to the data tab and then click on data dashboard. After exploring the data dashboard, if you cannot find the data you're looking for, then you can click on the data requests option, and that will take you to a form that we just recently developed that allows you to request additional data from us. We have gone in depth on the data dashboard in previous sessions, and those recordings are available on our 211 University page if anyone is interested. But since I presented county level data in today's session, I wanted to remind everyone that county level data can also be found on the data dashboard. You can hover over a county that appears in the Indiana map on the dashboard to see some county specific metrics, or you can click on the county to filter the entire dashboard to display data for just that county. So then you could see demographic data for just that county, as well as data on the types of needs and unmet needs that are most prevalent in that county. Also, if you would like to see data for multiple adjacent counties at once, then you just have to hold your mouse down and highlight all of the counties that you want to include. There's also a dashboard user guide that appears at the top of the data dashboard page that includes more specific instructions for filtering the dashboard in various ways. I also wanted to remind everyone that the dashboard can be filtered by a specific agency as well. So you can see all of that same data for a single agency listed in the 211 database. This can be beneficial if you're interested in seeing caller data from referrals made to your agency or another agency of interest. The agency filter appears at the top of the dashboard above the county map and allows you to search by agency name. And then, as I mentioned, we do have a new data requests form, and this is what that looks like. We do encourage you to visit our data dashboard first to see if you can find the data you're looking for. And if you cannot find it on the dashboard, then you can submit this form. The form will ask you some questions about why you're interested in 211 data and what exactly you're looking for. And then if you have any questions about the data request form or about 211 data in general, you can reach out to us at the email address that appears here on the first page of the form. Since I presented unmet needs data, I also wanted to talk about how we address those unmet needs. So after identifying what the unmet needs are from caller data each month, we also identify which counties those needs are most unmet in. Then our community engagement and resource curation teams dedicate time to identifying new resources we may be able to add to the database to help meet some of those unmet needs. We do this by conducting internet searches, but also by reaching out to community partners who may be able to provide us with valuable information. And then among those unmet needs that I shared in the data today, or data that you may discover on our interaction dashboard, if you ever notice that there are significant unmet needs for a type of resource you are familiar with in your community, we would appreciate you sharing that information with us. You can use the guided search on our website to identify whether certain resources are already listed in our database. The best way to do that is to go to in211.org, and right on the homepage, you will see a list of service categories to choose from. However, if you select the advanced search option, then you can use the keyword search to to search for a specific agency and see if their services are listed in the database. And if you are aware of any services that are not already listed in the database, if they are your own agency's services, then you can complete the resource listing request form on our website. You would just go to the Join the Database tab and click on Resource Request to add to 211 database. And if you are aware of services offered by another agency that would be a good addition to the database, you can either direct that agency to the listing request form, or you can send us an email at in211info@fssa.in.gov to let us know, and then we can reach out to that agency and discuss their services. All right, and then before I move on to information about the next session, Jill, do we have any questions at this time?
We have a couple. I've had a request that you, if you could go back to showing graphs 1 through 4 again quickly. I'm not sure if they missed it or if they had a question about it. And then, Anna, if you would kindly reshare the survey link at some point, that would be great. And then I did have a question about the high number of referrals for the one specific county. I thought maybe in 2024 there was a bad storm there, and that's why that particular county had so much more. I think it was Vermilion or Vigo.
Vigo, is that what you're referring to?
Maybe, yes.
Right here. Okay. So looking at this graph, just to keep in mind, Vanderburgh County did have the highest number of referrals, so even higher than Vigo. It's just off to the side since it was so much larger.
I probably meant Vanderburgh.
Okay, yeah, either one. Vigo did have a pretty large number as well, but I mean, it really could be for any number of reasons, but typically the larger counties that have more people in them, we're gonna see more calls and have more referrals in those areas. So that could very well be the case.
Okay.
And then, so you said that person was interested in 1 through 4. So here was our second one that showed the top needs. I'm guessing maybe they want to take pictures really quickly. And if anyone wants copies of these graphs, feel free to send us an email. We'll have that email up at the end. We can always provide those to you as well. Here was our third graph on unmet needs. And then here was our fourth graph on male versus female calls.
We had another question. What's the average response time for at 211 info email? It should be 1 to 2 business days. You should receive a response if it's to the info email box. There's also a database email inbox and a resource curator inbox. So, but the info one is checked daily by myself and or Sherry. We have another question. Do you know what kind of transportation needs people called about? For example, transportation across counties or to medical appointments or car repairs?
Yeah, so it would depend on the specific county. We do see different types of larger transportation needs depending on the county, but some of the most common transportation services that we refer to are non-emergency medical transportation services, as well as transportation expense assistance, and then general local bus services as well. Those are some of the main ones. If you visit the data dashboard, on the section that lists the types of needs, if you hover over the orange bar off to the right beside any given category, it will show you a list of more specific services in that category. So you could hover over that bar next to transportation and you could see some more of those specific transportation services. And if you click on a specific county at the top of the dashboard, then you could see that list of top transportation services specifically for that county.
Thank you for that, Sherry. I will say the data dashboard is incredible. And if you have the chance, just go and play around with it. You're not going to hurt anything. Um, you can select a date range. You can select all of 2024, all of what we have for 2023, because we started mid-year to collect the data for 2023, or year to date, starting this year. It's such a useful tool. And I feel like, anytime you have the chance to just kind of go in there and check it out, it'd be well worth your while. I hope that answered the questions, and I hope the person that asked the questions about the graphs 1 through 4 got what they needed. However, and Sherry, I think you already said this, but we will record this session, or this session is being recorded, and it will be available to view again later on today. We'll send out a follow-up email about today's session that also talks about the August session. So with that in mind, join us Wednesday, August 27th at 10 a.m. and we will discuss the final region of the state that we're going to cover, which is Region 5, the Southeast region. And that's going to cover Wayne, Rush, Fayette, Union, Decatur, Franklin, Bartholomew, Jackson, Jennings, Ripley, Dearborn, Ohio, Switzerland, Jefferson, Scott, Clark, Washington, Floyd, Harrison, and Crawford counties. We did want to also mention that this session is going to be the last Indiana 211 University session, at least for the time being. We may start this program back up, but it will be the last one we have for a while. All of the recorded sessions from the very beginning are going to remain on the YouTube channel. If you ever need a link for that, we can provide that, and it's usually given in the emails following each of the sessions. I think with that, if there are no more questions, or Sherry, if you had anything else.
I did not know. We just had one more slide here. This has our community engagement phone number and email address if anyone wants to make a note of that to reach out to us later. But yeah, if there are no more questions, I believe that's all that we had.
Just a couple of reminders. If you need to order materials for your agency to be given to clients, please do so through the in211.org page under community engagement. There is a marketing materials request form, and we can show you or send you those materials. They ship from a warehouse and generally come via UPS. So I just wanted to let you know about that. What else? If just another reminder, if you are looking to receive CEUs, we do need you to fill out the survey so that we can verify that you were on the call. We have no way of downloading the attendance record, so I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that as well. And here is the link to the survey again in the slide, and hopefully it's in the chat for you. For some reason today our Zoom was not working well and I could not access the chat to post that link. So anything else? Thank you so much for joining us today and in all past. We are grateful that you did. And with that, we will see you in August.
Thank you, everyone.